Welcome to the Black Girls Heal podcast, where we talk about changing unavailable relationship patterns, healing unresolved trauma, and building a healthy relationship with first you and then others. Every episode, we will talk about actionable advice that you can apply today to break unhealthy patterns and grow your self-worth. I'm Sheena Tubbs. Let's begin. Hello, ladies, and welcome to this week's episode of Black Girls Heal. This week, we are getting into the fear of letting people in, or just letting people in general, the things that get in the way, the pros and the cons, and some of the things that you can consider as you work on this step yourself. So, why is it important that we let people in? So I wrote in one of the posts on our Instagram this week how letting people in is an act of self-love. It's an act of self-love because we need relationships. We need connection. We need that sense of emotional security and stability. And a lot of times we push people away because we have fear. And sometimes the fear is legitimate. That if we let other people in, that emotional safety and security will be shaken, right? So we've had people who betrayed us before. We've depended on other people and they've come close but fallen short, or just fallen completely short and really disappointed us. We have had people maybe take advantage, people who may have abused us. And this is in any and all forms, from childhood to adult women. It can be slights that are huge and slights that are small, but no matter how big they are compared to other people, it's still hurtful, and it's pain that we try to avoid. And so as a result, we can have really fancy mechanisms to prevent letting other people in. One of the ways that people can be really slick about not letting people in is making the relationship all about them. And so you're the friend who you find it easier to ask some questions about them, to keep the topic related to what they're going through, to be really helpful. And so there's all this energy and there's all this supposed connection. But as far as what they know is going on with you, about where you're vulnerable, about things that you really need, about what's ticking in your head right now, that's not ever talked about because you're really good at spinning it to be about them. Sometimes we're aware of that and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we don't realize that maybe we're not getting as much from our relationships with other people until we sit and we're quiet with it. Sometimes we don't recognize it at all because we are so good at being the caretaker, being the mom of the group, being the person who is the dependable one. And so we're getting all of this affirmation and validation from that is a really good distraction because we don't have time to sit and look at what we're doing. Another way that we can be really slick in not letting people in is by being really busy. And so this is where we are very focused on our career or our purpose or our side hustles. I feel like the last couple years, it has been very in vogue and in trend to talk about having our multiple streams of income and getting our finances right, which is really great. I'm not knocking it, but I'm saying for those of us who already struggle with overcommitting and putting up walls and barriers, this has been a very healthy seeming way to keep people to not have time for the relationships that we need, to only give relationships just a little bit, but then we have an appointment, or we have to get sleep, or when we get together, we talk about business and making moves and all that other stuff, but we don't really talk about what's deeply going on with us, the fear of not being enough, the imposter syndrome that definitely comes with building businesses and growing in your career and pushing past ceilings. All that stuff may or may not get talked about, and if it does, it's only as a triumphant way, right? So we're not talking about it when we're right in the middle of it. Another way that we keep people out, and this isn't one of the ones that we may not be conscious of, but pretty deliberate, is just to straight up say, I don't really do relationships that way, or to purposefully keep your inner circle maybe 20 feet away, even though they're your inner circle, only to tell people so much because you just learned you've had to depend on yourself. is really interesting because even in our Facebook group, so we have a Facebook group where we continue the conversation and I share what the theme is of the week ahead of time and I get your questions and stuff. And one of our group members was talking about how she has a habit of trusting the wrong people and kind of pushing the right people away, or having a hard time believing that people are as good as they seem, even though they're probably the healthy ones, just, years of distrust and all that. And that's definitely what I see. There's something in us, those of us who struggle with letting people in, that it's almost like we seek subconsciously to have those fears validated and justified. So what that looks like is, the pattern in our life is we find ourselves constantly trusting and putting hope in and seeing the potential in the wrong people, who end up maybe judging us or shaming us or letting us down. And then people who are probably good for us, those are the ones who we're kind of busy with, or we're kind of trying to mind read and look for, this is too nice, you're too nice to me, or this is not going to last that long. So even though there's no problems in your relationship, you make some, or you make excuses to not hang out with them as much as you could. It's almost like there's a little radar inside of you that knows that, we're getting a little bit too close, and your autopilot turns you the other way, right? So this fear of being hurt that gets in the way really takes away from us being able to have a healthy, full, productive life. It's interesting with my coaching clients and other people, one of the myths that people really live by is that when I meet the right person, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or otherwise, I'll know and everything will be good and we'll just connect and I'll be able to trust. And girl, that's not how it works at all. You have learned throughout your life that intimacy and connection is scary, and that it only lasts for a little bit and then it disappears. And even when people have tried to be close to you, because you don't know how to let people in, because I promise you, in all of your years of life, not every single person that you have met has been unhealthy, toxic, and destructive. You have come across people who were good, loving, trustworthy people, and there was something in you that didn't allow you to go there. Or maybe they weren't even on your radar, right? In the room of 20 people, you were hanging out with the 5 people who weren't even worth your time, or the people who you could be the one who looked like they had it all together, but they would never know the true you or the flaws that you had, right? So because you haven't had that opportunity to let someone in and let someone love you and it not be painful on the other side, that does not magically change when you meet a good person, because again, you've met them before, but also because you don't really know what that looks like. How do I know when I'm being too vulnerable, if that even exists? How do I know when it's safe to actually let my walls down and open up with someone, and just stay there? And like, how do I tolerate that? Even if nothing bad is happening, just kind of being exposed and being seen can be really painful and traumatic and anxiety producing for some of us. Some of you may be feeling that right now. I know I'm feeling it right now, because it's soul bearing. It's a risk, right? And so if that is what you want, to be connected, to be in love, to be loved, to be seen, and not have to carry around that hypervigilance to make sure you're not hurt, you have to start that healing process now. That knight in shining armor, or princess in shining armor, whoever it is that you fantasize about being connected to, it doesn't just magically happen. And I know I've said this countless times before. If anything, once you meet that person, that's when it really gets hard. Any of the back and forth and conflict and tension that you're having now, that's only just with yourself. Once you actively involve someone who is going to hold you accountable and want to communicate with you and kind of require you to be a part of the relationship without all the BS and the smoke and mirrors, that is difficult, right? So some of the pros and cons, which I've already kind of hit on, but the pros of letting people in is that you actually are able to finally start to feel safe and secure. and seen, which at first really is scary, but after a while, when it becomes your normal, it makes life so much easier and so much more peaceful. As a result, your stress levels go down. This is why when we talk about people who are dog owners or pet owners, there's literal research that talks about how the stress levels of pet owners is less because they have that unconditional love and connection with another living thing, and that definitely increases when you're in relationship with people who are healthy and good for you as well. So that's science. Then also, your self acceptance improves. So this is important because when you don't have high self acceptance, no matter what is going on around you, it's never good enough. So this is kind of like the person who, or some of you may be listening, who when someone compliments you, you can have five different people compliment you about something that you feel insecure about, and you're like, no, they're just saying that, they're just my friend, or they're just trying to be nice. But literally, you have evidence and people who are like stating situations and occurrences about why this compliment they give you is fact, and you're still discounting it. When you don't accept or love yourself, you can push away all of the value and worth that you have without even knowing it. You know, you think you're trying to be balanced and you're trying to be neutral and you're just trying to be aware, and that's why you're going to be more cautious to accept too much praise from people. You don't want your head to get too big or too cocky. And what the truth is a lot of times what we're afraid means that we are too cocky or arrogant is basic self love, a basic level of self acceptance and looking yourself in the mirror and liking who you are, even when you are messing up, even when you're not doing the best presentation, or even when you've reached out to five people to hang out on Friday and nobody responds. Do you go into this pit of despair that no one loves you, or is there a part of you that knows that you are lovable and maybe just everybody's busy and it has nothing to do with you or whether or not people love you? Do you go straight to self-hate and disappointment because you don't know how to love yourself? And that's part of why it's hard to let people in, because we don't know how to really appreciate and see who we are no matter what is happening around us. We don't know how to stay grounded and self soothe when we do get disappointed, because part of relationships is to be disappointed, not to be abused. But I mean, when you work with other humans, it happens, right? So, but again, the pro of letting other people in is we're able to accurately gauge and assess our self-acceptance, where it is, where it needs to grow, and feel more secure no matter who's around us and who is not. And of course, the cons, like I said, I mean, setting yourself up to be disappointed. This is only when we have not healed and worked on the way that we pick people and choose who's around us, though. Um, Also, fears or cons of letting people in is when we choose the wrong people, we can still end up feeling more alone and more unseen and more hopeless, and just thinking, well, what's the point of doing this friendship thing, this relationship thing, this family thing, if I'm still just kind of just here and not being listened to or attended to? And it could feel like we're wasting time. So, with all of that said, here are some things to consider for you as you start to learn to let other people in. If you're a listener of the podcast, been following me for a while, this is all going to sound redundant because these are the keys, and there's no use to reinventing the wheel. And so for you to learn how to let other people in, first you got to heal the wounds that started it. You got to find the roots and where it came from. And so if we don't know where this fear, where these thought patterns came from, we're going to be inhibited. And one of the ways that we can stop ourselves from doing that healing is to say, well, I've thought about it, I've prayed about it, I've journaled about it, I even went to therapy about it, I think I'm good. If you did all those things and yet you still freeze, have hesitation, have concern when it comes to just sharing yourself with someone else, or letting yourself trust someone without them having to know you for 6 months on end and go through all these tests and prove that they show up to brunch on time for 4 months in a row with no gap or excuse for them to be a few minutes late, or they immediately respond to your text. Like, if you're so quick to cut people off still, then maybe there is some healing that you still have to do. Maybe you did some of the main things that were important to you maybe a year or two ago, but there's deeper that you have to go. And it takes courage to go there. It takes you being ready to figure out what that is and to be open to change. I can't tell you how many people come in my office sometimes, or we're on a video call during coaching, and they're like, "Yeah, it's hard for me to trust people." And that's kind of it. And it's like they're asking for help and that they want to change. But then when I give homework, or when I talk about changing your perspective, or when we talk about going deeper, the walls come up, or there's excuses, or, oh, I didn't have time to do that, and all that stuff that gets in the way. And then when we talk about, well, let's talk about what's getting in the way, then there's excuses why we can't go there, right? So it really takes you being open, y'all. It takes you being open to maybe the idea that what you think about the world and what you think about people might be wrong. It might be true because of your background and your history, the people around you and the things that happened to you absolutely should not have happened. But it's not true for the billions of people in the world that everybody is dangerous and everybody is just good for nothing and all of that. So being open to changing your mind and your perspective, getting at the roots and doing that healing stuff. And then also, I think a way for you to start to work towards letting other people in is fixing what your standards are for what you want. I think a lot of times we are very general, saying, well, I just want to be happy and I want to have a good relationship. But what does that look like? When people talk about, we could probably throw a rock, or I could probably Google search and find in the top 20 results, 19 of those top 20 results will say, write a list of what you want in a relationship, or be clear. And it says that because there's a reason for it. You need clarity. You need to figure out what you're working towards. You need to find out what you need. Now, I know sometimes it's hard to know how to reverse engineer that, which is something we're not going to get into in this podcast episode, because we talk about it more in our group coaching program and Learn to Thrive. And, we help you more with that. But these are basic steps to help you figure out who are the people that you actually want to let in. Is it you? Is it them? And kind of get a little bit of movement started there. So I hope that this was helpful. If you can relate to any of this stuff about the things that you do that stops you from letting people in, I would love to hear about it. You can join our Facebook group by going to blackgirlsheal.org/group, or just searching for Black Girls Heal on Facebook. Feel free to ask any questions that may have come up. Every Thursday, we have a post where you can ask your questions about the episode topic. And if you're listening to this podcast episode much later, you can always come back and look at it then and add your question there. And I'm thinking about doing a little freebie related to this. We'll see. We'll see if I have time to do so, but to help you help yourself. So we'll see. But that's it for this episode. I hope you have a great week. Follow us on Instagram at blackgirlsheal or at blackgirlsheal_ to stay in the conversation as well. Keep in touch with updates and tips and resources, and just get some inspiration. So talk to you soon. Bye.